Hello and welcome to the Voice of the People. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love you enough to tell you the truth and I respect you enough to give you the facts. Thanks for joining us on the first day of March 2021. We're so excited to have the opportunity to entertain you, to give you information, and to agitate you a little bit so you can think outside the box and you can talk to your family and friends about what you agree with and what you disagree with. I like to say that this show is sponsored by Myers Law. Attorney Catherine Myers is an attorney that you need to call if you have a family matter or a criminal matter. You can call her at 803-250-1176. Also, we'd like to thank Ruler Initiatives Foundation Incorporated, a 501c3 nonprofit that's starting up, and they will have several initiatives. One would be churches, families, and communities in concert with Parent Empowerment Group to give information to the community so we can do a better job in organizing and taking care of our children in particular. The night is also another important night. This is the first day of Women's History Month, and so we like to celebrate Black women in this month of March for all their contributions and all their hard work and all the leadership. Black women are powerful as a voting bloc in the state of South Carolina. Black women are powerful in the black church. They make up about over 75% of the congregation, and they represent almost 90% of the finances contributed. So black women are a powerful voting bloc. I am on the board of directors for the League of Women Voters for South Carolina in the upstate, and I go to a lot of training, and black women, in particular in the black community, truth be told, they should have every elected position there is: Senate, House of Representatives, school board, city council. All the elected positions should be in the hands of black women because they are the most powerful voting bloc in our communities and the Democratic Party. Now, why black women are experiencing some challenges in obtaining their rightful place in this process, it goes back years and years of propaganda and sexism along with racism. And so now black women are really finding their voice and they're finding their power. And as black men, we support them in that struggle because we all understand and we have empathy and we have sympathy for one another in the struggle for citizenship in the United States of America. And we have been the victim of cruelty, humiliation, discrimination, all of these things. But we have continued to move forward. And so you cannot ignore the power of black women in our communities. And it's been often said, if you go to any church, 75% of the congregation are black women. So we want to encourage black women, young and old, to do some training among one another, train up young girls to understand that find their voice and find their place, and to not allow themselves to be the victim of stereotypes. We have a problem with sexism in the black community, which is evident by our churches, where about 90% of the church leadership is men, and women are not given an equal opportunity, and they, in most cases, they finance churches 80% of the time. So that's a show for another night, but give a shout out and respect and honor to black women during the month of March for Black Women History Month. And so we want to celebrate their struggle, their leadership in particular. So all you women out here who are listening, who have been running these organizations, the NAACP, the church, all these organizations, understand that you are more than capable of being the leader of these organizations. So we love you enough to tell you the truth and respect you enough to give you the facts. So celebration to black women in particular for Black Women History Month in the month of March. Now, April, I think, is International Women's History Month, but we want to celebrate our sisters, black women, in March. So for all you do, we appreciate what you do, and thank you for your service to yourself, to your families, and to your community. We have an interesting show for you tonight. We don't like to beat around the bush. We like to get straight to the issues. And so one of the issues that we have tonight is we want to encourage everybody that as a race of people, we fought long and hard in 2020. We had something in common. We wanted to get rid of something we call was bad leadership, and the code name for that is 45. And so we have folks campaigning and saying what they were going to do and how life is going to be better and that kind of thing. And here we are in 2021, and we have a new administration, and there's a lot of challenges. The pandemic is first on plate, so you understand that everybody has to come together and understand that we have to fight this virus. I want to encourage you very quickly to wear your mask over your mouth and your nose, to wash your hands at least 20 seconds, and use a hand sanitizer. Practice social distancing greater than 6 feet, and do not gather in groups greater than 10, and take the vaccine. And so I want to encourage you to listen to your doctor, to your pharmacist, any respected leader that you have, and to consider protecting yourself and your family and your community and your state by taking the vaccine. I realize there's some folks out there that are in opposition to the vaccine, and they have every right to be in opposition, but I encourage each and one of us to make our own decision about what's best for our medical needs and separate politics and religion from your medical needs, because if you get an infection, you're going to go to the doctor and you're going to get an antibiotic. If you have a broken bone, you're going to go to a healthcare facility and get that, take an x-ray and get it reset and put a cast on. So understand that we accept modern medicine. It has saved so many lives. And there's some propaganda out there saying about the vaccine. The vaccine, there have been several cases of adverse effects, some symptoms, but we haven't had any deaths because of that. But we have had 500,000 deaths for folks who are catching the virus and having loss of life. So please, please, be thoughtful, be prayerful, and use your critical thinking and take the vaccine. So we always have to talk about that every Monday night. I also like to encourage everybody that whatever you fight for to get, you must fight to keep it. So I want you guys to stay motivated, to talk about politics, to talk about religion, continue to fight and to keep people registered to vote, and continue to sacrifice your personal time and take some time away from the TV, from the NFL, the NBA, all these programs, and use that time to volunteer and to help your community and to fight in the struggle to have a voice in the state of South Carolina. Some of you guys might know this and some of you guys might not, but right now at the state capitol, in the Senate, the Republicans have complete control. In the House of Representatives, the Republicans have complete control. In the governor's office, the Republicans have complete control. And some of you in your various areas, your small towns and that type of thing, you're on city council and county councils, and the Republicans or the opposing parts of town have majority rule. And so a lot of us, black elected officials, we are in a situation where we have the minority voice and the minority vote. And after we debate, the opposition, they pass the rule, they pass the agenda, they pass the law, and oftentimes we become frustrated. Sometimes we even give up. But I want to give you a word of encouragement tonight. I want you to remember your history. I want you to go all the way back to around 1910 and come forward. We've always been minorities in this country, and we continue to be minorities in the state of South Carolina. But through leadership, through political leadership, and faith-based leadership that understands that there's no difference in politics and religion when it comes to justice for our people. And so any ministers are telling you that he's not involved in politics, he don't understand why they put Jesus on the cross. It was politicians and government that put our Savior on the cross. And so I don't want to hear any of this madness about you can't talk about religion and politics at the same time, because that is what makes the world go around in this country and all around this world. And we use our faith to strengthen us and to give us motivation and to give us protection as we do the work. And oftentimes it's dangerous work as we talk about moving forward in this country. Now, there's something that happened during the Civil Rights Movement. Some of you folks have never participated in any resistance to racism in this country. Let's not get it twisted. When you study history, a lot of folks, grandparents and parents, were not involved in the struggle. And a lot of folks were. But some folks have no point of reference for resistance. I want to share something with you. During the Civil Rights Movement, there was a lot of black folks, particularly ministers, that were in opposition to Martin Luther King and were in opposition to the struggle because they felt that there was no concern of theirs because they were being taken care of in a very nice way by us. But then there were some leaders that understood the gospel of Jesus Christ and understood the concept of Moses and leading people out of the wilderness, leading people out of slavery, out of Jim Crow, out of this injustice that we're living in. So as one thing that Martin Luther King did, that the white media and white newspapers refused to acknowledge. Martin Luther King was radical, just like Jesus. He was insightful. He was trained. He was highly educated, which means a lot when you're a leader. And what he understood was, with the nonviolent movement, that the nonviolent movement, the whole purpose was to shame America into seeing itself for what it is: brutal, violent, and taking advantage of people, his own citizens. And so that shame game was able to be effective through the newspaper and through the media, and it was an embarrassment to this country in trying to be a leader around the country and around the world, talking about democracy and human rights and that type of thing, and they were destroying and lynching and killing and denying human rights to its own citizens, those same citizens who built this country, who built the South with tobacco and cotton and rice and free labor. And so, but that concept of shame on one hand, shame appeals to the righteous white people, supposedly, to the righteous white folks that are silent against the vicious white folks on what they do to people. And Martin Luther King said your silence is acceptance and acknowledging the bad folks. So shame is what the nonviolent movement was about. But the other half of that strategy for the civil rights movement was pain, P-A-I-N. Well, what type of pain? The only pain that you can give a society like America, a capitalist society, the pain is the reduction of profits and to stop black folks from consuming. In the state of South Carolina, and I would safe to say Georgia, and Aiken, Augusta Market, Columbia, Greenwood, Charleston, your number one consumer, if you're going to sell something, your number one consumer is black folks. So black folks have the power collectively with their spending dollar to give pain to any community. So just take, for example, this weekend, if nobody went to the buffet, if nobody went to these restaurants, if nobody went to Walmart, if nobody went to Sam's, those type of places, the leadership of those companies would have a meeting on Monday and said, our profits have dropped 35 to 40%. That's a crisis. What are we going to do? And somebody would say, well, those black folks, somebody told them not to spend their money. And the response would be, let's have a meeting and talk to their leadership, because we can't afford to lose this kind of money and these kind of profits. So whether we are in the majority on these boards, in the state house, on the school boards, city council, county council, we have power to inflict pain in these communities because of our extreme buying power and purchasing power. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. So how can we organize as a community to get somebody to listen to us and to respect us as a community? Is we have to be organized, grassroots. So because the business persons do not care too much about what the talented tend to do because their numbers are small. But regular black folks, the 90% of us, we are the real consumer. We have the real power. And so even in the Bible, it talks about leadership from among you. If you have a community, you don't want folks driving into your community telling you how to run it. You want folks in that community to come together and get the greatest among you and work together to solve the problem. And that's why oftentimes when you talk about what we're facing in 2021, it all comes back to churches, families, and communities working together to create a power base that somebody will want to sit down and negotiate with us. Now, sitting down with somebody and them reflecting to you, telling you that I know how you feel, I know it's bad, I know the history of it. We are working on diversity and inclusion and equity, and we feel you. That adds up to nothing. Nobody's going to change the way they do business. Nobody's going to negotiate until you're organized and you have some power that can cause them pain. So let's talk about how we do this. These are some difficult times. These are some new times. Let's talk about the churches for a minute. Churches are great institutions. Some of the churches have done a good job, and some of the churches have just been status quo. And so now the challenge that we have, we all got to come together with this. How are we going to save our churches? The churches are in peril right now. There's a good chance the churches is not organized, is not meeting. It is not a hub. It is not the center of communication. It's not the meeting place that it was. We have to accept that. But we also have to have a plan to bring the black church back in our communities. Everybody knows we got a lot of real estate, and all these churches are empty. So that's real estate that's not being used. So you got to get past the mindset that we're going to wait until the virus is gone and we're going to come back and fill the church up and the choir going to get up there and we're going to shout hallelujah and we're going to have a good time. You got to get past that mindset. You got to understand where we're at today in March 1, 2021. All the churches are empty. All the ministers majority of ministers are preaching on Zoom. The challenge you have with Zoom is most people at their kitchen table in their living room, they're not going to watch Zoom for the entire service. They're going to watch it. They're going to flick the TV. And so you don't have the captive audience that you would normally have if you were in-house. That's real. That's been proven. Anybody that knows anything about marketing and about Facebook and about social media and about Zoom, you can only hold people's attention for about 5 to 7 minutes. That is a fact. That is why we have commercials that run for 60 seconds. You cannot hold people's attention in their households on a computer or on an iPad for 30 minutes. It's impossible. So accept that reality. So how can we move forward if we can't come in and worship together? CDC say don't worship in groups greater than 10. Let's think about how we can arrange this. On a Sunday, just think about this. You can have 8 people meet every hour. You can have 8 people come at 8 o'clock. You can do Sunday school. You can do prayer service. 8 people. You have different classrooms. You can have 5 classrooms with 5 people in it. You got to come back to your building. You got to come back in small groups, less than 10. You got to come back to have meetings, have Sunday school, have prayer service, to have focus groups. You got to open the church back up. The weather's finna change. Open your windows up. Meet outside. Do like we used to do back in the day. Bring all the chairs and lawn chairs outside, and let's gather together. And also something that we have to our advantage now. We have emails. We have YouTube. We have Zoom. Churches talking to the leadership now. Faith-based leaders, pastors. You're going to have to learn to work together. You're going to have to learn to identify somebody among you to be the leader. You can't have 12 churches and have 12 leaders. You have to have 12 churches, 1 leader, and 11 other ministers that respect this one leadership. We got to unite. 1 leader or 2 leaders representing 12 churches. That's power. That's a lot of votes. That's a lot of dollars. And so the church have to move forward. Now, it's something that you need to do during this time. And if you look online, if you go around the country, all communities, no matter how poor they are, You have to have leadership from the bottom up. You cannot have a preacher or some educator or some professional person telling everybody what to think and what to do. That does not work anymore. You're going to have to identify grassroots leadership. You must have grassroots leadership training. You have to train people in the community, in the church, from the bottom up. If you're a leader and nobody in your group knows anything about leadership, then what you have is a dictatorship. And you have folks that's not thinking, they're just listening to you. That is not a good formula. You want grassroots leadership. So everyday working folks to understand what leadership is so they can have an appreciation for you if you have some leadership skills. What grassroots leadership does is called peer support, giving out information. A grassroots leader in his neighborhood is going to have the ear, the eyes of his whole neighborhood because they live with him and they watch him or her. And there will be a great influence to their community. They use the same concepts when they run campaigns. You need boots on the ground. So you faith-based leaders, if you're not going to put on some work boots and some sneakers and get out there in the community, nobody's going to listen to you. That day is over with. You got to come out of the pulpit, on the ground, take off your tie, your bow tie, your necktie, put on some work clothes, and go among the people to serve them. You got to walk the streets just like Jesus. You got to really be into the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we got to redefine in our churches what discipleship means. Listen to me closely. Discipleship in the church and boots on the ground in a campaign in our community, we got to merge that together. We are in a place and time in this state, in this country, that if we don't change the way we do business, if we don't get together, all of our rights will be taken away. We've already backed down to 1953, if you have not noticed. So churches, you're in a good position to be empowered. And a recap on that, we got to use the real estate, got to have grassroots leadership training, and something else we got to do. Don't get it twisted. You got to start training your children at an early age, the importance of politics and religion. We need leadership training academy starting in 4th and 5th grade. These kids need to be raised up in the struggle as warriors for Jesus. Listen closely. They need to be warriors for Jesus, the gospel of Jesus Christ. They need to be warriors for their community and their people in justice and voting rights and civil rights and justice in health care and justice in criminal justice. Children have to be raised up in that. You cannot protect your children from this cruel world that we have. You have to prepare them to fight in their early years so when they get older, you don't have to worry about them. They will have the fighting spirit of a warrior. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough to give you the fact. So, and everybody's talking about the black males, and we know that's a problem. They're shooting and killing our boys. Black men, it is our responsibility to nurture, train, and protect our young men. And so we have the real estate, we have all the churches. We should have a leadership academy for our young black boys that black men are giving them the ideas and the practices and the overall vision for manhood in our community. Black men, if we don't do that, the dominant culture will turn our own young men against us. Now, don't get me twisted. In that same leadership class, we have to have young girls. So we have to start training up another generation that has the knowledge and have the support of us that this struggle is not going to go away. It's been around for 400 years. I don't know why you think that it's going to go away. You see what happened when we got lazy and we thought we had made it? You have not made it. Listen closer. You have not made. You've only assimilated and you shuffled and you danced and you lied about what you really felt. And some of you have been a poor example to your children because you have laid down and you have taken every injustice that's been afflicted upon you and you taught your children to fear and to have empathy for you, but not to respect you because you're not strong in the spirit. You can't tell your children that you love the Lord if you have a spirit of fear. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. We're just talking about what we are talking about, and it's powerful. Now, networking. Now, you know good and well that we got enough money in all these churches that we can network and get us a credit union. We just need to go find one of these mega churches that got a credit union. They'll give us the formula, and we put our money together. And if every black church in your county, in your city, not putting their money in one bank and not negotiating a fair interest rate on houses and cars and loans for their member, the faith-based leadership, you're failing your congregation. That's your responsibility. I'm just talking about what I'm talking about. We have enough buying power with our churches, with our families. And when I say families, don't get confused. About 20% of the families in our community have a mother, father, and children in the household. That's what they put on TV. White community, they have about 30% of their families that fits that profile. A family is any adults that's living in a house that's paying bills together and trying to make it. Okay, stepfathers, no fathers, 2 women, 2 men, whatever. That myth about the nucleus family, that's been alive for the last 50 years. Let's respect every man, every woman, every family, no matter what configuration, no matter what value system they have, no matter what sexual orientation. That ain't none of our business. Now, if you want to keep them out of your pulpit, that's fine. That's a religious choice. But for civic rights, people can be whatever they want to be in this country. But in your religious groups, in your bylaws, you can exclude people if you want to. But that does not align itself with the love of Jesus Christ. I'll throw that out there. So I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. We're going to have to come together. And you would think that with the leadership academies in our churches for our boys and girls, for our senior citizens, and for our grassroots leadership, we would be informed voters. You know, you don't want to vote because you feel good. You don't want to vote for a personality. You want to vote for somebody that will implement the policies to uplift your people. Black folks in America now, it's safe to say that we're second-class citizens. It's safe to say that there's injustice in the criminal justice system, in the healthcare system, which has been exposed by this virus, in housing and affordable housing. We've been discriminated against. Public education has failed our children in the state of South Carolina and continues to fail our children. And the only kids that have any opportunity to get a quality education in the state of South Carolina is the 10% of the black middle class folks, and the rest of us don't get nothing. So the time has come when the 90% has to step up and get trained and understand that 90% is powerful in your purchasing power, and that we have to come together so somebody will respect us because of our ability to boycott businesses, and that will create some pain and enough knowledge. As we acquire knowledge, we have to talk to give them some shame. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give you the facts. We'll see you next Monday night on The Voice of the People. You pray for me.